Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UHS Defiance, watching the stars that had become his home for the past 18 months. The massive ship carried 2,400 souls toward a new world in the Kepler 442 system, where humanity would build its first colony beyond the solar system. Jake had dreamed of this moment since he was a boy staring up at the night sky from his family farm in Kansas. Now at 45, he commanded the largest vessel humans had ever built for deep space travel. Dr. Lisa Parker called out from her science station with excitement in her voice. She had discovered something unusual near their target planet that made her instruments dance with strange readings. The energy patterns did not match anything in their databases and seemed to pulse with a rhythm that felt almost alive. Lisa had spent 12 years studying alien signals from Earth, and this was unlike anything she had ever seen before. Chief Engineer Ryan Martinez worked below decks, making sure their fusion drives ran perfectly for the final approach to their new home. He knew every pipe and wire on the Defiance after helping to build her in the orbital shipyards above Mars. Ryan came from a family of engineers in Texas and took pride in keeping the ship running like clockwork. He loved the deep thrumming sound the engines made when everything worked just right. Communications Officer Beth Sullivan monitored channels from Earth while also scanning for any signals from their destination. She had not heard from home in 6 months due to the vast distance they had traveled. Beth missed her sister back in Oregon but felt honored to be part of humanity's greatest adventure. Her job was to keep the colonists connected to each other and eventually to establish contact with Earth from their new world. The peaceful journey ended without warning when space around them exploded with hostile fire. Alien ships appeared from nowhere using technology that bent light around their hulls. The vessels were sleek and deadly with weapons that tore through the Defiance's armor like paper. Jake ordered battle stations, but they had no real weapons except mining charges and construction tools. Admiral Zethkar commanded the attacking fleet from his flagship, thinking this would be an easy victory over primitive humans. His reptilian species, the Sarkathi, had crushed dozens of young races trying to expand beyond their home systems. The hegemony coalition that ruled this sector of space would not allow humans to spread and grow strong. Better to end them now, before they became a threat. The Sarkathi had built an empire with 6 other alien species over thousands of years. They believed only the strong deserved to rule while the weak served or died. Humans appeared weak with their slow ships and simple technology. Zethkar expected total victory within minutes and planned to hunt down any survivors on the planet below. But humans fought back with a fury that surprised their attackers. Ryan rerouted power from life support to create makeshift weapons while Jake ordered ramming attacks against the larger alien vessels. The crew worked together with desperate courage, turning maintenance tools into bombs and using cargo containers as shields. They had no training for space combat, but learned quickly when their lives depended on it. Beth managed to send a message toward Earth before enemy fire destroyed her communications array. The signal would take years to reach home, but she hoped it would warn humanity about the danger lurking in deep space. Her last transmission contained tactical data about the alien ships and their weapons that might help Earth prepare defenses. The battle raged for 3 hours with the Defiance taking massive damage from weapons far beyond human technology. Hull breaches vented atmosphere into space while fires spread through multiple decks. Medical teams led by Dr. Kevin Walsh tried to save the wounded, but they lacked supplies for so many casualties. The ship was dying, and everyone knew it. Jake made the hardest decision of his life when he realized they could not win or escape. He ordered all remaining crew to the escape pods, while he and a volunteer team stayed behind to ram the Defiance into the enemy flagship. The massive human ship accelerated toward Zethkar's vessel at full power, with its fusion drives pushed beyond safe limits. Marine Colonel Steve Henderson led the evacuation, helping civilians into pods, while his soldiers provided covering fire against alien boarding parties. Steve had fought in Earth's last war 20 years ago, but this was different. These aliens showed no mercy, and seemed to enjoy killing humans. His Marines formed a fighting retreat, buying time for families to escape. The collision between the Defiance and the alien flagship lit up space like a new star. Both ships exploded in a ball of plasma that destroyed 6 other enemy vessels caught in the blast. Jake's sacrifice bought time for the escape pods to reach the planet's surface, though many were damaged during the chaotic descent through the atmosphere. Dr. Parker found herself leading a group of survivors on the alien world they had come to colonize. The planet had breathable air and water, but also held secrets that would change everything. Ancient ruins dotted the landscape, showing that another species had once lived here before disappearing. Lisa wondered if they had also faced the hegemony, coalition, and lost their war for freedom. Colonel Henderson organized the scattered survivors into a defensive force using whatever weapons and supplies they had salvaged from the wreckage. The aliens would come looking for them soon, and humans needed to be ready for another fight. Steve knew his people were tough, but they faced an enemy with superior technology and numbers that seemed impossible to beat. 3 months had passed since the Defiance burned in space above the alien world that humans now called Haven. Dr. Lisa Parker led teams through the ancient ruins scattered across the northern continent, while Colonel Steve Henderson trained every able person in the settlement to fight. The survivors had built Haven Base from salvaged ship parts and local materials, creating walls that could stop small arms fire, but nothing heavier. Lisa's archaeological teams discovered that the previous inhabitants called themselves the Ancients and had fought a losing war against the same enemies now hunting humans. The ruins contained weapon emplacements and shield generators that still held power after centuries of abandonment. Most fascinating were the computer cores that contained vast databases of technical knowledge and tactical information about something called the Hegemony Coalition. Back on Earth, Admiral Carol Davis received Beth Sullivan's final transmission 18 months after it was sent. The message reached human space just as Earth's colonies were celebrating the expected arrival of the Defiance at its destination. Instead, they learned that humanity had made contact with hostile aliens who possessed overwhelming military superiority. Carol immediately began mobilizing every ship in the human fleet, while industrial leaders converted civilian shipyards to military production. President Kevin Walsh addressed the world from the United Nations building in New York, declaring a state of total war against the alien threat. Every nation on Earth put aside old disputes to focus on building weapons and ships for the coming conflict. Factories that once made cars began producing fighter craft, while orbital platforms designed for asteroid mining were converted into weapon foundries. Humanity had learned that they were not alone in the universe, and their new neighbors wanted them dead. On Haven, Ryan Martinez worked day and night in his makeshift laboratory, trying to understand ancient technology. The alien computers used principles that human science barely understood, but Ryan had always been good at making things work, even when he did not fully grasp the theory behind them. He successfully activated an ancient shield generator that created an energy barrier around Haven Base strong enough to stop orbital bombardment. The breakthrough came when Ryan figured out how to combine human fusion reactors with ancient power regulators, creating hybrid systems more efficient than either technology alone. The first test nearly destroyed his workshop, but the second attempt produced a stable field that could deflect energy weapons. Ryan knew they had found something the original builders never intended, but human engineering had always involved using tools in ways their makers never imagined. Lisa made an even more important discovery when she accessed the main ancient database hidden deep beneath the largest ruin complex. The artificial intelligence that spoke to her through holographic displays had been waiting for centuries for someone to find it. The AI explained that the ancients had been peaceful explorers, much like humans, until the Hegemony Coalition arrived to destroy them. Their mistake was trying to fight the enemy using conventional tactics against superior numbers and technology. The ancient AI revealed that the hegemony consisted of 7 species, led by the crystalline Nexari, who believed they were destined to rule the galaxy. The Sarkathi served as their primary military force while other races provided specialized skills and resources. They had conquered hundreds of worlds by crushing any species that showed potential for rapid growth or technological advancement. Young civilizations were eliminated before they could become threats, but the AI had learned something important during the final days of its civilization. The hegemony could be beaten if someone was willing to fight with methods they did not expect. The coalition's greatest weakness was their inability to adapt quickly to new tactics because their command structure was rigid and hierarchical. A smaller force using hit-and-run attacks combined with guerrilla warfare could cause damage far beyond their apparent capabilities. Earth's first revenge fleet launched 6 months after receiving the distress signal under Admiral Davis's personal command. The hastily built warships used human technology pushed to its absolute limits with fusion drives that could accelerate ships faster than anything previously attempted. The crews were volunteers who wanted to save the colonists and punish the aliens who had attacked innocent explorers. Admiral Davis encountered a hegemony patrol group 3 weeks into their journey to Haven. The enemy ships were larger and better. Armed but human vessels proved faster and more maneuverable than the aliens expected. Davis ordered her captains to use ramming attacks and suicide runs that the enemy found incomprehensible. Why would any rational species deliberately sacrifice their ships and crews for tactical advantage? The Battle of Deep Void lasted 6 hours, with human ships diving through enemy formations like angry hornets while alien commanders tried to understand what they were fighting. Captain Amy Foster led her destroyer squadron in a coordinated attack that destroyed the enemy flagship by overloading their reactor in a collision that vaporized both vessels. The surviving hegemony ships retreated in confusion, having never encountered an enemy willing to die to achieve victory. Word of the human victory spread through subspace communications, reaching other conquered species throughout hegemony territory. Races that had been slaves for generations began to whisper about the newcomers who fought back against impossible odds. Some planets started experiencing mysterious accidents in critical facilities, while others saw their hegemony overseers assassinated by unknown resistance groups. On Haven, the defenders detected incoming scout ships probing their defenses, but the ancient shield generators held firm against enemy weapons. Colonel Henderson's militia used salvaged ancient weapons to destroy 2 reconnaissance craft that came too close to the base. The weapons fired coherent energy beams that cut through alien armor like hot knives through butter, giving humans their first real advantage in ground combat. Dr. Parker discovered that ancient technology could be modified using human engineering. Principles to create systems the original builders never imagined. The AI was fascinated by human creativity and willingness to experiment with dangerous combinations of incompatible technologies. Together, they began developing new weapons and defenses that combined the best of both civilizations. Ryan successfully created the first human ancient hybrid fighter craft, using a salvaged shuttle as the base and ancient anti-grav systems for propulsion. The prototype could fly circles around conventional aircraft while carrying weapons that fired concentrated plasma bolts. Test flights showed the hybrid design was superior to anything either species had built alone, proving that cooperation could overcome even the greatest technological disadvantages. The real turning point came when survivors throughout the galaxy realized that humans represented something the hegemony had never faced before. These newcomers did not surrender when outgunned, or retreat when outnumbered. Instead, they fought harder when things looked hopeless, turning every defeat into a lesson for the next battle. The galaxy had not seen such determination in 1,000 years, and it gave hope to beings who had forgotten what freedom meant. News of human resistance spread across the galaxy like wildfire, reaching species that had lived under hegemony rule for centuries. On dozens of worlds, slaves began sabotaging critical facilities, while resistance fighters emerged from hiding to strike at their oppressors. The crystalline Nexari, who ruled the coalition, found their perfect order crumbling as chaos erupted throughout their empire. Haven Base had grown into a fortress city where humans worked alongside refugees from 6 different species who had escaped Hegemony worlds to join the rebellion. Dr. Lisa Parker established the first interspecies research facility, combining human creativity with alien knowledge to develop weapons and technology that neither could create alone. The ancient AI served as translator and teacher, helping different races understand each other despite vast cultural differences. Captain Amy Foster commanded the newly formed Ghost Squadron, flying modified ancient fighters that could bend light around their hulls, making them nearly invisible to enemy sensors. Her pilots came from the original colonists who had learned to fly using civilian shuttles and now operated the most advanced aircraft in known space. The squadron struck hegemony supply convoys and patrol fleets with hit-and-run attacks that left no survivors to report what they had seen. The attacks became legendary throughout hegemony space, where soldiers began calling the human pilots Phantoms of Haven. Enemy crews reported being attacked by ships that appeared from nowhere, fired devastating volleys, and vanished before anyone could respond. Some alien commanders refused to patrol certain sectors, claiming the space itself had become hostile to their presence. Supreme Overlord Krixtal of the Nexari convened an emergency session of the Hegemony Council in their Crystal Palace, orbiting the capital world. The 7 ruling species had never faced a rebellion that spread so quickly or caused such widespread damage to their infrastructure. Military commanders reported that entire fleets were being destroyed by enemies who refused to fight conventional battles and seemed to multiply each time they were attacked. Admiral Zethkar, who had escaped the destruction of his flagship above Haven, demanded a massive fleet to destroy Earth before humans could build more ships. The Sarkathi military leader argued that striking at the human homeworld would end the rebellion by cutting off reinforcements and demoralizing the scattered resistance groups. Other council members agreed that swift action was needed to restore order, but their intelligence was months out of date and failed to account for how rapidly human industrial capacity had expanded under wartime conditions. President Kevin Walsh had converted Earth's entire economy to military production, while colonies throughout human space built new shipyards and weapon factories. Every asteroid mining station became a fortress, while civilian freighters were armed with military-grade weapons and shields. Admiral Carol Davis now commanded a fleet of 800 human warships supported by vessels captured from the enemy and modified with hybrid technology. Her crews trained constantly in the new tactics developed on Haven, using ancient weapons combined with human engineering to create systems that exceeded anything the galaxy had seen before. The human fleet moved through space like a pack of wolves hunting much larger prey. The interception of the Hegemony Armada occurred at Proxima Station, where human forces had established an advanced base using captured alien technology. Admiral Davis positioned her ships in a defensive formation that appeared weak and disorganized to enemy commanders who expected easy victory against inferior opponents. The trap was carefully planned, using intelligence gathered from ancient databases and prisoner interrogations. When the Hegemony fleet attacked, they found themselves facing an enemy that fought unlike anything in their military manuals: human. Ships charged directly into their formations, accepting massive damage to deliver close-range attacks that penetrated alien shields and armor. Captains ordered ramming attacks against larger vessels while their crews escaped in pods to be recovered by rescue ships. Chief Tactical Officer Paul Chen developed the Berserker Protocol during the battle when conventional tactics failed to stop the larger enemy fleet. The new strategy involved coordinated suicide attacks where human ships overloaded their reactors while grappling with alien vessels, creating chain reaction explosions that destroyed multiple targets. Each human ship became a guided missile piloted by volunteers who sang battle songs as they died. The Battle of Proxima Station lasted 14 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the Hegemony Armada. Human losses were severe, with over 200 ships destroyed, but they had eliminated more than 500 enemy vessels, including 3 super dreadnoughts that had never been defeated in combat. The tactical data recovered from alien computers provided intelligence about hegemony fleet movements and defensive positions throughout their territory. Admiral Davis broadcast the battle footage across subspace networks reaching every world. In hegemony space, the images of human ships ramming massive alien vessels while their crews sang defiantly showed oppressed populations that their masters could be beaten. Uprisings erupted on 43 worlds within days, as slave races attacked their hegemony overseers with whatever weapons they could find. Dr. Parker made another crucial discovery when she accessed the deepest levels of the ancient database and found star charts showing the location of the hegemony capital world. The information included detailed scans of orbital defenses and the quantum communication network that connected all coalition worlds. More importantly, she learned about a critical weakness in their command structure that could be exploited to cripple their entire empire. The ancient AI revealed that hegemony commanders relied on constant communication with their superiors and could not make independent decisions when cut off from the central command network. If humans could disrupt their quantum communications during a major battle, the enemy fleet would become paralyzed and unable to coordinate their attacks. The AI had learned this weakness too late to save its own people, but humanity might still benefit from the knowledge. On Haven, Ryan Martinez worked with refugee engineers to develop new weapons that combined human projectile technology with ancient energy systems. The hybrid weapons fired solid rounds accelerated by plasma fields, creating projectiles that could penetrate any known armor while maintaining devastating explosive power. The new ammunition was manufactured using materials found in the ancient ruins and human industrial techniques. Colonel Henderson established training camps where humans and aliens learned to fight together using tactics that emphasized speed, mobility, and overwhelming firepower concentrated at critical points. The mixed units proved highly effective, with each species contributing unique abilities to create combat teams greater than the sum of their parts. Human aggression, combined with alien technical knowledge and ancient tactical wisdom, created soldiers unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The rebellion spread to over 100 worlds as news of human victories reached every corner of hegemony space. Species that had been enemies for millennia united against their common oppressors, while others who had served the coalition willingly began questioning their loyalty. The rigid structure that had maintained order for thousands of years started cracking under pressure from enemies who refused to follow the established rules of warfare. 1 year after first contact, humanity had transformed from peaceful explorers into a galactic military force that struck fear into the hearts of their enemies. General Rachel Brooks commanded the largest human fleet ever assembled, with over 2,000 warships supported by vessels from 12 allied species who had joined the rebellion against hegemony rule. The sight of the massive armada moving through space sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Human war technology had evolved beyond recognition, incorporating lessons learned from every battle and breakthrough achieved in ancient laboratories. Ships now carried rage drives that actually increased efficiency when crews experienced high stress and anger, turning human emotion into tactical advantage. The drives fed on the determination and fury of their operators, becoming more powerful as battles intensified. Marines wore powered armor that combined ancient energy shields with human projectile weapons, creating soldiers who could survive orbital bombardment and fight alien war machines in hand-to-hand combat. The armor enhanced human strength and speed while providing protection against energy weapons that could vaporize unprotected targets. Each suit contained enough firepower to level city blocks. On Haven, the original colonists had become instructors at the military academy, where humans and aliens trained together in combined arms tactics. Colonel Henderson, now General Henderson, oversaw development of the Terran doctrine that emphasized adaptability, aggressive counterattacks, and willingness to sacrifice individual units for strategic victory. The doctrine was studied by resistance movements throughout the galaxy. The Hegemony Council grew desperate as their empire fragmented with entire sectors, declaring independence daily. Military forces were spread thin, trying to maintain control, while facing enemies who struck from unexpected directions using tactics that defied conventional military wisdom. Supreme Overlord Crystal authorized deployment of their most forbidden weapon system. The Void Hammer was a reality-warping device that could erase entire star systems from existence, leaving empty space where planets and stars once existed. The weapon had been built by the Nexari, using technology stolen from extinct civilizations, and required enormous amounts of energy to operate. Its use was restricted to the most extreme emergencies because activation could destabilize local space. Time. Intelligence about the Void Hammer reached human forces through refugee scientists who had escaped from the hegemony capital world. Dr. Parker and the ancient AI analyzed the reports, concluding that the weapon posed an existential threat not just to humanity, but to all life in the galaxy. The device could potentially trigger a cascade effect that would unravel reality across multiple sectors. The strategic situation required immediate action before the hegemony could deploy their ultimate weapon against Earth or other major population centers. Admiral Davis proposed a massive assault on the Trinary Gates, a strategic choke point that controlled access to the galaxy's core systems. Capturing the gates would cut off hegemony reinforcements and provide a staging area for the final attack on their capital. The Battle of Trinary Gates became the largest space engagement in galactic history, with over 5,000 ships from both sides converging on the strategic waypoint. Human forces faced a hegemony fleet 3 times their size, defending fortifications that had never been breached in 2,000 years of warfare. The odds seemed impossible, but humanity had learned to turn desperate situations into opportunities. Admiral Davis employed the Phoenix strategy, where coordinated suicide attacks were followed immediately by reinforcement waves that exploited gaps created by the initial assault. Human ships charged the enemy defenses in waves, with each captain knowing they would probably die, but trusting that their sacrifice would save the ships behind them. The tactic required precise timing and absolute courage from every crew member. First wave of human vessels broke through the outer defensive perimeter at tremendous cost, with 90% casualties among the attacking ships. But their sacrifice allowed the second wave to penetrate deeper into the fortification complex, while the third wave struck at the main command center. Each successive attack built on the destruction caused by previous waves. Captain Foster led her Ghost Squadron in a desperate assault on the hegemony flagship, where intelligence suggested the location of the Void Hammer might be stored. Her fighters penetrated the massive vessel's defenses using ancient stealth technology and human piloting skills that defied enemy countermeasures. The squadron fought through automated defense systems and alien marines to reach the ship's computer core. The breakthrough came when Foster's team accessed the enemy database and discovered not just the Void Hammer's location, but detailed technical specifications showing how the weapon could be disabled. The information came at a terrible price, as Foster and most of her pilots were killed during the fighting retreat from the flagship. Their sacrifice provided humanity with the intelligence needed for the final assault. General Brooks received the transmission from Ghost Squadron just as human forces completed capture of the Trinary Gates. The data showed that the Void Hammer was integrated into the fortress world of Nexus Prime, which served as both the hegemony capital and their ultimate defensive position. The weapon could only be destroyed from inside its control chamber deep within the planet's core. The victory at Trinary Gates cost humanity over 800 ships and 30,000 lives, but opened the way to the hegemony heartland. More importantly, the battle demonstrated that human forces could defeat any enemy regardless of technological superiority or numerical advantage. News of the victory sparked uprisings on hundreds of worlds as oppressed species realized their oppressors could be beaten. Dr. Parker analyzed the captured technical data with help from the ancient AI and refugee scientists from multiple species. The Void Hammer's power source was connected to quantum field generators that maintained stability throughout the device. If those generators could be overloaded, the weapon would destroy itself, and possibly the entire fortress world in a catastrophic feedback explosion. Ryan Martinez designed the special charges needed to overload the Voidhammer's containment systems using human nuclear technology enhanced with ancient energy manipulation techniques. The devices were small enough to be carried by infiltration teams, but powerful enough to trigger the cascade failure that would eliminate the ultimate weapon. Building them required materials that could only be found on Nexus Prime itself. General Henderson volunteered to lead the infiltration mission, knowing it would be a one-way trip for everyone involved. The strike teams would have to penetrate the most heavily defended world in the galaxy plant charges, in a facility protected by reality-warping technology, and escape before the explosion consumed everything within light years. No one expected to survive, but the mission had to succeed. Preparations for the final assault began immediately, with human engineers working around the clock to modify ships for the desperate attack on Nexus Prime. Every vessel was equipped with enhanced shields and weapons, while crews received training in close quarters combat against Nexari crystalline soldiers. The entire human fleet would be needed for the assault, with no reserves held back. The fate of the galaxy now depended on whether humanity's rage could overcome the ultimate expression of hegemony power. As ships gathered for the final battle, crews knew they were about to attempt something that had never been done before: the complete destruction of an empire that had ruled space for millennia. Win or lose, the galaxy would never be the same. The fortress world of Nexus Prime hung in space like a metallic cancer, consuming the light of 3 captured stars that powered its defenses. The planet had been transformed over millennia into the ultimate weapon, with continents replaced by gun batteries and oceans drained to make room for shield generators. At its core, the Voidhammer waited to unleash destruction that could unmake reality itself across half the galaxy. Supreme Overlord Crixtal had retreated to the deepest bunkers of his capital world, where crystalline architecture merged with living rock in patterns that hurt human eyes to look upon. The Nexari ruler had gone mad with power and desperation, threatening to activate the Voidhammer rather than surrender to the primitive species that dared challenge his perfect order. Better to destroy everything than allow inferior beings to claim victory. Fleet Admiral Martinez led humanity's final armada of 5,000 ships toward the fortress world, knowing that most would never return home. The vessels carried every weapon and piece of technology that human engineers could devise, combining Earth's industrial might with ancient wisdom and captured alien systems. Each ship represented the hopes and dreams of entire worlds that had joined the rebellion. The approach to Nexus Prime revealed defenses beyond anything previously encountered, with automated weapon platforms the size of cities and energy shields that could deflect the combined firepower of entire fleets. Gravity wells created by artificial black holes trapped approaching vessels, while reality distortion fields made navigation impossible for ships lacking ancient guidance systems. The fortress world was designed to be impregnable. Admiral Davis commanded the lead assault wave, knowing that her ships would bear the brunt of enemy fire while clearing paths for the main fleet. Her captains had volunteered for what everyone understood was a suicide mission, with orders to ram their vessels into the largest defensive installations. The Berserker Protocol had evolved into an art form where human crews sang battle hymns while piloting their ships into devastating collisions. The battle began when human forces encountered the outer defensive perimeter 50 million kilometers from Nexus Prime. Automated defense platforms opened fire with weapons that could crack planetary crusts, while fighter swarms emerged from hidden bases throughout the system. The space around the fortress world became a hellscape of energy beams and exploding ships as 2 civilizations fought for the right to exist. Science Admiral Parker directed the technological warfare from her command ship using ancient computer viruses to infiltrate hegemony systems while coordinating attacks on critical infrastructure. Her teams had discovered that the fortress world's defenses relied on quantum entanglement networks that could be disrupted by precisely timed electromagnetic pulses. Breaking those connections would create windows of vulnerability. The breakthrough came when Parker's technicians successfully hacked into the Fortress world's sensor grid, causing massive gaps in its defensive coverage. Human assault ships poured through these blind spots while alien commanders struggled to coordinate responses without their automated systems. The first wave of attackers reached the planet's surface and began establishing landing zones under heavy fire. President Walsh made the ultimate sacrifice when he ordered Earth itself to be converted into a kinetic weapon. The planet's population had already been evacuated to colony ships, while massive fusion engines built in secret accelerated humanity's homeworld to near light speed. Earth became a projectile weighing 6 trillion tons, moving at a significant fraction of light speed toward the enemy capital. The impact of Earth against Nexus Prime's shields created an explosion visible from neighboring star systems as the planet's mass converted to pure energy upon hitting the defensive barriers. The Fortress world's shields collapsed under the impossible stress, while massive earthquakes shattered continents and boiled away oceans. But Nexus Prime survived the impact, though critically damaged. General Henderson led the infiltration teams through the chaos of the planetary assault, knowing they had minutes before the Void Hammer's automatic systems activated in response to the threat. His soldiers fought through crystalline corridors that shifted and changed around them, while Nexari defenders used reality warping weapons that could erase targets from existence. Every step toward the core facility cost lives. Colonel Sarah Mitchell commanded the final assault team that reached the Void Hammer's control chamber deep within the planet's molten core. The device itself defied description, existing partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that human minds could not comprehend. Its operation had already begun destabilizing local reality as preparation for activation against the attacking fleet. The chamber containing the Void Hammer pulsed, with energies that made time flow differently in various locations, while gravity reversed itself randomly throughout the facility. Mitchell's team fought Nexari guards who could phase in and out of reality while setting the nuclear charges that would overload the weapon's containment systems. The explosives had to be placed with perfect precision or the resulting cascade would consume the entire galaxy. Ryan Martinez's hybrid charges required manual activation since automated systems could not function in the reality-distorted environment around the Void Hammer. Each team member knew they would die when the charges detonated, but their sacrifice would prevent the weapon from being used against humanity's homeworlds. The final battle had come down to a handful of humans against a device that could destroy star systems. The containment failure began as a small crack in space-time that rapidly expanded as the Void Hammer's power source fed back into itself. Reality unraveled around Nexus Prime as the Fortress world was consumed by the same forces it had tried to weaponize. The explosion created a new star where the planet had existed, while shock waves propagated through subspace affecting every world within 100 light years. Supreme Overlord Crixtal died screaming as his crystalline body was dissolved by the energies he had tried to control, while his perfect empire crumbled around him. The other Hegemony Council members perished with their capital world, as the weapon they had built to preserve their power became the instrument of their destruction. The coalition that had ruled the galaxy for millennia ceased to exist in a single moment. General Henderson's final transmission reached the human fleet as Nexus Prime died around him. His words were simple but carried the weight of humanity's sacrifice across the entire war. For Haven, for Earth, for freedom. The message became humanity's battle cry and was remembered by every species that gained liberty through human sacrifice. The new star created by the Void Hammer's destruction could be seen from halfway across the galaxy, serving as a beacon of hope for oppressed peoples everywhere. Hegemony fleets surrendered or fled as word spread that their leaders were dead and their ultimate weapon had been turned against them. The impossible had happened, and the galaxy's greatest empire had fallen to a species that refused to surrender. But The victory came at a terrible cost, with hundreds of human ships destroyed and millions of lives lost in the final assault. Earth was gone along with the homeworld that had given birth to humanity's dreams of exploring the stars. The survivors faced the challenge of building a new future from the ashes of the greatest war in galactic history. Admiral Davis led the surviving human fleet away from the expanding Nova that had once been Nexus Prime, knowing that their work was not finished. Scattered hegemony forces still controlled some worlds while refugee populations needed protection and support. The military phase of the war was over, but the harder task of building peace would require all of humanity's strength and wisdom. 5 years had passed since the destruction of Nexus Prime, and the galaxy bore little resemblance to the empire that had once dominated every inhabited world. The Hegemony Council existed only in history books, while the Galactic Alliance governed, through democratic principles that gave every species an equal voice regardless of their technological level or military strength. Former enemies worked together to rebuild worlds devastated by centuries of oppression. Fleet Commander Davis now oversaw Alliance naval forces from her headquarters on New Terra, the world that had once been called Haven, where humanity first learned to fight back against impossible odds. The human colonies had spread to over 200 star systems, but they maintained the military traditions forged in desperate battles against superior enemies. Every settlement kept trained militia ready to defend freedom wherever it might be threatened. Admiral Carol Davis walked through the memorial gardens, where black stone monuments honored the millions who died fighting for galactic liberation. The names covered acres of polished granite with human designations mixed among those of dozens of alien species who had joined the rebellion. At the center stood a simple inscription that had become the Alliance motto, carved in every language of known space. The words read, "They taught the galaxy that some fires cannot be extinguished," and below them burned an eternal flame fed by plasma from the star that had once been Nexus Prime. Beings from across the galaxy made pilgrimages to New Terra, seeking to understand what human determination truly meant, and how ordinary people could accomplish impossible things when fighting for their loved ones. Dr. Parker headed the Alliance, Archaeological Commission working to preserve knowledge from extinct civilizations while ensuring that weapons like the Void Hammer were never rebuilt. Her research teams included scientists from 50 different species who had made remarkable discoveries about the galaxy's history and the cycles of empire that had dominated galactic politics for millions of years. The ancient database remained their most valuable resource. The Commission had established strict protocols for dangerous technology discovered in archaeological sites, requiring unanimous consent from all member species before any research could proceed. Weapons capable of destroying planets were dismantled, or buried while their technical specifications were sealed in archives that could only be opened by direct vote of the Alliance Council. The galaxy had learned that some knowledge was too dangerous to possess. Ryan Martinez served as chief engineer for the Alliance Technical Division, where human creativity was combined with alien knowledge to develop peaceful applications for advanced technology. The hybrid systems his teams created powered everything from interstellar transport networks to planetary defense grids that protected vulnerable worlds from natural disasters. The same engineering principles that had built weapons of war now served to preserve life. The most successful project was the development of terraforming technology that could transform dead worlds into garden paradises in a matter of decades rather than centuries. Refugee populations from former hegemony worlds were given new homes, where they could rebuild their civilizations without interference from outside powers. Over 300 worlds had been colonized using Alliance terraforming systems. General Henderson ran the Alliance Military Academy, where young beings from every member species learned to work together in integrated units that emphasized cooperation over conflict. The curriculum included extensive study of the Terran doctrine, but also focused on peaceful conflict resolution and the protection of civilian populations. War was taught as a last resort when all other options had been exhausted. The Academy's Most important lesson was that strength came not from superior technology or numbers, but from the willingness to sacrifice for others and never surrender in the face of tyranny. Students learned that freedom required constant vigilance, and that every generation must be prepared to defend the rights won by those who came before them. The price of liberty was eternal readiness to pay that price again. On New Terra Former. Enemies lived side by side in communities that would have been impossible during the hegemony era. Sarkathi warriors taught human children traditional hunting techniques, while human engineers helped crystalline Nexari refugees repair their light-based technology. The planet had become a symbol of what the galaxy could achieve when different species worked together instead of fighting. The biggest challenge facing the Alliance was not external enemies, but the vast distances that separated member worlds and the difficulty of maintaining unity across thousands of star systems. Communication networks based on ancient quantum technology allowed instant contact between worlds, but political disagreements still arose over resource allocation and territorial boundaries. Democracy was messier than empire, but far more just. Admiral Davis received troubling reports from long-range scout ships that had detected unusual signals from beyond the galactic rim where no known civilizations existed. The transmissions used encryption methods that suggested advanced technology and possible hostile intent, but were too distant to analyze properly. Some scientists theorized that the hegemony had been running from something even worse than themselves. The possibility of a new threat led to increased cooperation between Alliance members as species that had recently gained independence realized they might need to defend their freedom once again. Shipyards throughout Alliance space began producing new vessels based on hybrid technology, while research facilities worked to develop better sensors and weapons systems. The galaxy prepared for whatever might emerge from the cosmic dark, but the Alliance had advantages that the old hegemony never possessed, including the knowledge that different species working together could accomplish far more than any single race acting alone. Human determination combined with alien wisdom and ancient technology created possibilities that none could achieve separately. The galaxy had learned that diversity was strength rather than weakness. Young beings throughout Alliance space grew, hearing stories of the humans who had refused to surrender when faced with impossible odds, and inspired an entire galaxy to fight for freedom. Schools taught children that ordinary people could change the course of history when they stood up for what was right, regardless of the personal cost. The legend of humanity's unyielding rage had become a beacon of hope for all who faced oppression. The final scene showed children of every Alliance species playing together in the gardens of New Terra, where flowers from 100 worlds bloomed under alien suns. Human boys and girls ran alongside young Sarkathi, while crystalline Nexari children created light sculptures that danced through the air. The next generation was learning that former enemies could become the closest friends. Above them, the star that had once been Nexus Prime burned with steady light, reminding everyone of the price that had been paid for their freedom. But the children looked forward to the future rather than dwelling on the past, understanding that they carried the responsibility of protecting what their parents had won through sacrifice. The flame lit on Haven now burned throughout the galaxy, carried by beings who had learned from humanity that some things were worth fighting for, no matter what the cost. In the end, humanity's greatest victory was not the destruction of an empire, but the proof that hope could triumph over despair and that ordinary people could achieve extraordinary things when they refused to give up. The galaxy would remember that lesson long after the last human ship had turned to dust and stars themselves began to fade. Some fires truly could not be extinguished because they burned in the hearts of those who would never stop fighting for freedom.